1925. Paris is drowning in luxury, but the Eiffel Tower is rusting, and its maintenance costs the city millions. Victor Lustig, a man with the manners of a lord and the soul of a predator, sits in the expensive Hôtel de Crillon, reading a newspaper article about the tower's decay. In his mind, a plan is born that will later be called the most audacious scam in history. Lustig sends invitations to 5 major scrap metal dealers for a secret meeting. He introduces himself as the Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. In a private hotel suite, amidst the clinking of crystal glasses, he whispers a state secret. The government has decided to demolish the tower and sell 7,000 tons of iron to the highest bidder. His victim is André Poisson, a man who craved recognition in the Parisian establishment above all else. Sensing the merchant's uncertainty, Lustig plays the final act. He hints that as a, quote, poor official, he needs a small bribe to guarantee a win in the tender. It works. Poisson gives not only the money for the metal but also a huge extra sum. Having received a check for over 1 million francs, Lustig flees to Vienna. Poisson, realizing he's been fooled, is so ashamed of his gullibility that he doesn't even report it to the police. And the most incredible part? A month later, Lustig returned to Paris and tried to sell the tower a second time using the exact same scheme. London, 1822. General Gregor MacGregor, a hero of the wars in South America, appears in high society with stunning news. He declares himself the cacique, or prince of the fabulously wealthy country of Poyais, on the Caribbean coast. He describes a capital with golden domes, where rivers are filled with gems and the land yields 3 harvests a year. MacGregor was a marketing genius. He printed his own currency, issued a handbook for emigrants, and began selling land certificates. Hundreds of Scottish families gave their last savings to buy a ticket to this paradise. 250 of the first settlers set sail on 2 ships, clutching papers for farms in a country that appeared on no map. When the ships reached the shore, instead of golden cities, the settlers found only impenetrable jungles and swamps. Most of them died from tropical diseases and hunger. By the time the British Navy rescued the survivors and news reached London, MacGregor had already fled to France, where he started selling Poyais shares all over again. He stole the equivalent of 4 billion modern pounds sterling. Lisbon, 1924. Artur Virgilio Alves Reis, a small-time entrepreneur with big ambitions, devises a plan that nearly destroyed the economy of Portugal. He forges a contract on behalf of the Bank of Portugal and convinces the official British company, Waterloo and Sons, which printed real escudos, to manufacture 200,500 denomination banknotes for him. These weren't forgeries. They were real money, printed on real paper with real plates, but with duplicated serial numbers. Reis brought suitcases full of cash into Portugal. To launder the capital, he creates his own Banco Anglo-Portuguese and begins buying up real estate businesses and even shares of the Bank of Portugal itself to change the law and hide his crime. The scam was uncovered by chance when a journalist noticed a private bank issuing loans at suspiciously low interest rates. When police finally tallied the damage, it turned out Reis had injected an amount equal to 1% of the country's total GDP. His actions caused financial chaos that ultimately led to a military coup and decades of dictatorship. April 1983. The German magazine Stern announces the sensation of the century. 62 volumes of Adolf Hitler's secret diaries have been found. The world held its breath. Reporter Gerd Heidemann claims the documents were salvaged from a plane that crashed near Dresden in April 1945. The publication pays 9 million German marks for this treasure. In reality, the diaries were manufactured by Konrad Kujau, a talented forger who bought ordinary notebooks at a department store. To make the paper look old, he soaked it in strong tea and then beat the covers against a table to create a worn effect. He even made a mistake with the letters on the cover, using a Gothic font where instead of AH, it read FH, but experts blinded by the desire for a sensation didn't notice. The truth emerged only 2 weeks after publication. Forensic analysis revealed whiteners in the paper and glue that only began to be used after 1954. Hitler's diaries turned out to be the most expensive waste paper in history. The reporter and the forger ended up behind bars, and the reputation of one of Europe's most influential magazines was destroyed forever. For 20 years, Bernard Madoff was considered a god of the stock market. Former chairman of the Nasdaq exchange, philanthropist, and symbol of reliability, his fund promised a steady return of 10 to 12% annually, regardless of the economy's state. The world's wealthiest people, charitable foundations, and major banks dreamed of Madoff taking their money. But there was one secret. Madoff never invested anything. He simply deposited new clients' money into a bank account and used it to pay dividends to old ones. It was a classic Ponzi scheme on an unparalleled scale. On the 17th floor of the Lipstick Building in New York, a team worked daily printing thousands of fake reports on trades that never existed. The house of cards collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis when clients wanted to withdraw $7 billion at once. There was no money. The total loss amounted to an incredible $64 billion. Madoff received 150 years in prison, and his own sons, who turned their father into the police, paid with their lives. One committed suicide, the other died of cancer due to stress. Rudy Kurniawan was the youngest and most aggressive collector of elite wine in the world. He spent millions at auctions and hosted tastings where he uncorked bottles worth as much as a car. He was nicknamed Dr. Conti for his love of the most expensive Burgundy, Romanée Conti. His knowledge of taste seemed superhuman. But when the FBI raided his home in Los Angeles, they saw not a collection, but a chemical laboratory. Thousands of counterfeit labels and corks lay in the sink. Rudy mixed cheap California wines, added a bit of old port for color, and poured this mixture into empty vintage bottles. He personally glued the labels and applied the dust of decades using a hairdryer. He managed to sell fake wine worth over $20 million. His scam was so perfect that many collectors still have his works in their cellars, afraid to open them and admit they bought ordinary table wine for the price of a castle in France. Rudy became the first person in U.S. history to be convicted of wine fraud. The 1960s. 17-year-old Frank Abagnale runs away from home with just a few dollars in his pocket, but he has a weapon stronger than a knife: incredible charisma. After altering his birth date on his driver's license, he buys a Pan Am pilot's uniform and starts flying around the world for free, posing as a co-pilot. He flew over 1 million kilometers without ever touching the controls. When the sky became too small, he changed professions. Abagnale became the chief pediatrician at a Georgia hospital, masterfully delegating work to interns to avoid revealing his incompetence. Later, he forged a Harvard law degree and landed a job at the Attorney General's office. Over 5 years, he wrote fake checks totaling $2.5 million across 26 countries. He was caught in France following a tip from a former girlfriend, but instead of rotting in prison, the FBI made a deal. The government realized he knew more about forgery than all their experts combined. Today, the former #1 scammer is a respected consultant, helping banks protect themselves from people like his younger self. In the 90s, every American dreamed of finding a boardwalk sticker on a McDonald's fries package. The Monopoly lottery promised millions of dollars, cars, and trips. The odds of winning were 1 in a million. But there was one man whose odds were 100%. Jerry Jacobson, a former cop and head of security for the company that printed the game pieces. Jacobson had access to the most valuable stickers before they were sent to restaurants. In airport restrooms, he secretly removed security seals and replaced winning pieces with commons. Over 12 years, he built a network of winners, including mobsters, strip club owners, and even religious leaders. They claimed the prizes, and Jacobson took his cut in cash. No ordinary customer won a top prize for over a decade. The scam was only uncovered after an anonymous tip to the FBI. Agents conducted an operation called Final Answer, posing as a film crew, interviewing the winners. It turned out the total amount of stolen prizes was $24 million. McDonald's had to give away another $10 million to save its reputation. Sarwar Zaman, a young man from Bangladesh, had a talent for convincing people that the impossible was within reach. In 2018, he announced the creation of a massive project, the Kuwait Maritime Terminal. He showed forged letters from the Kuwaiti royal family and revenue charts, promising to make investors fabulously wealthy. Zaman even took potential partners on tours to the desert, pointing at an empty shoreline and claiming that the region's largest port would rise there in a year. He used complex terminology and rented skyscraper offices to create an illusion of legitimacy. People believed him so much that they invested over $15 million in a project that existed only in his Photoshop. The fraud was exposed when one of the investors simply called the official Kuwaiti embassy. It turned out the country's government hadn't even heard of such a project. Zaman tried to flee but was detained. This story became a reminder. Even in the age of digital tech and satellites, you can sell a deserted beach as a goldmine if you have enough confidence in your voice. New York, 2016. Anna Delvey appears in high society, a German oil heiress with a $60 million fortune. She wears Gucci, leaves $100 tips, and lives in five-star hotels. Her goal is to create an elite art club, and the city's wealthiest bankers are ready to open their vaults to her. In reality, Anna Delvey didn't exist. She was Anna Sorokin, the daughter of a truck driver from near Moscow. She didn't have a cent, and her lavish life was built on fake bank checks and the ability to convince friends to pay for her flights and hotels, promising to pay them back tomorrow. She was a master of psychological manipulation. If you act like a millionaire, no one dares to ask for your balance. The fairy tale ended when unpaid hotel bills reached hundreds of thousands of dollars. Anna was arrested, but even in the courtroom, she staged a fashion show, hiring a stylist for her appearances. She stole over $270,000 but became a star. Netflix paid her $320,000 for the rights to film her story, allowing her to pay off her debts and even profit from her own scam. The 1870s. America is gripped by land fever. Scammers led by James Revis, later called the Baron of Arizona, claim rights to vast territories in Kansas and Arizona. They present 18th century documents stating the Spanish crown granted these lands to their ancestors. Thousands of farmers and entire towns face eviction. Revis was a brilliant forger. He traveled to Spain and Mexico, where he secretly planted forged documents in state archives. He even found the perfect wife. A poor girl, he declared, the last heiress of the ancient Peralta lineage. Railway companies and mining giants paid him millions of dollars just to let them keep working on his land. The deception was uncovered when an observant printer noticed that one of the Spanish documents was printed in a font invented 100 years after the date on the paper. It also turned out the paper contained modern fibers. The Baron of Arizona traded his luxury estate for a prison cell. This scam nearly caused a civil war in a single state, where people were already arming themselves to defend their homes. In the late 90s, Enron was the 7th largest company in the United States. It was called, quote, America's most innovative firm. They traded everything from natural gas to internet bandwidth. Stocks grew like weeds, and the company's leadership bathed in gold, receiving million-dollar bonuses for the incredible profits they drew in reports. But behind the shiny facade hid a rotten tumor. Using complex accounting schemes and a network of shell companies, Enron hid billions in debt. They recorded future expected profits as real money that didn't exist yet. Auditors from Arthur Andersen, who were supposed to check them, instead helped shred documents when regulators' questions began to surface. In 2001, the house of cards came crashing down. Stocks dropped from $90 to a few cents in weeks. 20,000 employees lost their jobs and all their retirement savings, while top managers managed to transfer millions to offshore accounts. It became the largest bankruptcy in history at the time, forever changing global business rules and trust in corporate reports. New York, early 20th century. George Parker, the man who made the phrase, selling a bridge, a real business plan. Every day he strolled across the Brooklyn Bridge, looking for gullible tourists or immigrants. Parker introduced himself as the owner, and complained that collecting tolls alone was too difficult, so he was looking for a reliable partner to buy the ownership for a few $1,000s. He was incredibly persuasive. Parker produced fake title deeds and even put up for sale signs. Some buyers were so confident in their luck that the day after the deal, they came to the bridge with hammers and boards to build toll booths. Police had to forcibly remove the new owners from the roadway. Besides the bridge, Parker sold Madison Square Garden, the Metropolitan Museum, and even the Statue of Liberty. He did this for 40 years, until he was sentenced to life in prison. His name became synonymous with scamming, but his success was based on a simple truth. People want quick money so badly they are willing to buy even what belongs to the whole world. The Netherlands, 1630. The country is going crazy over flowers. Tulips, recently imported from Turkey, become a status symbol. Prices skyrocket. People mortgage houses, farms, and family heirlooms to buy a single bulb of the rare Semper Augustus variety with flaming red stripes on white petals. At the peak of the fever, one bulb cost as much as 12 acres of land or 40 tons of wheat. People traded futures on tulips that hadn't even grown yet. It was the first financial bubble in history. Scammers sold rotten roots as elite varieties, and the market swelled with fake expectations and pure greed. In February 1637, the market collapsed instantly. Suddenly, no one wanted to buy flowers for the price of a palace. Thousands of people were left with nothing but bulbs that were now worth no more than common onions. This crash was humanity's first lesson. When an item's price is based only on the belief in its infinite growth, catastrophe is inevitable. Late 80s. The world is crazy about the duo Milli Vanilli. Two charismatic guys with long dreadlocks conquer the charts with the hit Girl You Know It's True. They win a Grammy for Best New Artist, sell millions of albums, and become icons of a generation. Their faces are on every poster, their voices in every radio. But during a performance in Connecticut, a technical glitch occurred. The backing track jammed, and the phrase, "Girl You Know It's," repeated dozens of times. The singers panicked and ran off stage. It turned out Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan never sang in their songs. Producer Frank Farian hired professional vocalists and used the boys only as a pretty picture, because they looked perfect for MTV. It was the biggest scandal in music history. Their Grammy was revoked, the first and last time in the history of the awards. Dozens of lawsuits were filed against the group for consumer fraud. The boys' careers were destroyed overnight. The story of Milli Vanilli became a dark reminder that, in the age of visual content, we often fall in love with the shell, never suspecting that inside is absolute silence. London, 1974. Lord Lucan, a charismatic aristocrat and professional baccarat player, leads a lavish life, but behind closed doors, his world is falling apart. Casino debts are mounting, and a divorce process is turning into a war. One evening, a horrific crime occurs in his home. His children's nanny is murdered, and his wife is attacked. The last person seen at the scene was the Lord himself. Hours after the incident, Lord Lucan vanishes. His abandoned car is found on the coast, stained with blood, but there is no body. British police launch one of the largest manhunts in history. Hundreds of sightings emerge. The Lord was allegedly seen in Australia, South Africa, and even the jungles of India. He became a ghost man who used his high society connections to erase himself from the earth forever. More than 50 years have passed, but the mystery remains unsolved. Did he commit suicide in the English Channel, or did he live out his days on a private island under a false name? This scam against justice has become a legend, proving that with enough money and the right title, you can walk out of a room and simply vanish into thin air, leaving only a blood stain and endless conspiracy theories. 2016. Wembley Stadium shakes with applause. On stage is Ruja Ignatova, founder of OneCoin. She promises to kill Bitcoin and make everyone in the room a millionaire. "This is a financial revolution," she cries, wearing a dress worth a fortune. People from all over the world, from small farmers to businessmen, invest their life savings into her project. But behind the shiny OneCoin interface, there was no blockchain technology at all. It was just a database where numbers were drawn manually. While investors watched their virtual fortunes grow, Ruja bought luxury real estate in London and Bulgaria. When the FBI got too close, the crypto queen boarded a flight to Athens and vanished. $4 billion disappeared with her. Ruja Ignatova became the only woman on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Rumors fly that she changed her face with plastic surgery or was even eliminated by the mafia. Thousands were left in debt, and her scam became the largest fraud in the crypto world, reminding us that digital mountains of gold are often just pixels on a screen. 1870. Two rugged prospectors appear in a San Francisco bank with a bag of uncut diamonds. They claim to have found a field of treasures somewhere in the Arizona desert. The wealthiest bankers and jeweler Charles Tiffany are stunned by the quality of the stones. At the scent of easy money, America's most influential investors flock, ready to give millions for a share in the, quote, diamond mine. To convince the inspectors, the scammers previously bought industrial diamonds and cheap sapphires in Europe for about $10,000. They literally seeded a patch of desert with them, pressing stones into rock crevices and anthills. When experts arrived, they dug diamonds out of the sand with their own hands. Madness gripped the market. Shares in the new company were bought up instantly. The bubble burst when state geologist Clarence King arrived. He noticed something strange. Diamonds were lying where, by the laws of nature, they couldn't be. Moreover, some stones showed signs of being cut. The scammers managed to flee with $600,000, leaving prestigious bankers blushing with shame. This case forever changed U.S. mining law, but reminded us, sometimes what glitters in the sand is just a well-placed trap. The late 19th century. In America, the railroad boom is the new gold rush. Scammers create the North Dakota Railroad Company and announce the construction of a line connecting ports with major cities. They issue luxurious bonds featuring smoking locomotives and gold seals. Investors, blinded by future dividends, invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into the development of this transport artery. To create the appearance of progress, the scammers hire hundreds of workers who dig trenches and lay sleepers daily. But there's a catch. They build only 300 meters of track, then move those same rails further down the route as soon as investors come to inspect. The entire company office is a room with a telegraph that isn't connected to anything, but constantly churns out fake reports of, quote, successful westward expansion. The scam was exposed when one of the investors decided to ride the entire route on horseback, and instead of a railroad, found empty prairies with a pile of rusty rails. The organizers managed to disappear with the cash, leaving behind only miles of promises. This story proved, you can build an empire on paper, but it will crumble the moment someone wants to actually ride on it. The early 90s. In expensive hotels across Europe and the US, a man appears calling himself Gregory Hemingway, the son of the great Ernest. He has the same gravelly voice, a love for strong drinks, and spends hours at bars talking about his father's unpublished manuscripts. He is treated like royalty, his unpaid bills forgiven, and he is served the finest whiskey in hopes of an exclusive interview. The imposter got so into character that he began signing books on behalf of the Hemingway family and even took advances for memoirs. In reality, he was a former teacher from a small town who had memorized the writer's biography. He knew every detail, from the favorite brand of cigars to how Ernest tied his laces. People believed him because he gave them a chance to touch a legend they so desperately missed. The deception was uncovered when he met an actual acquaintance of the Hemingway family at a charity gala. It turned out the imposter hadn't even been to the countries he described so epically. He was kicked out of the hotel, but he simply moved to another city and changed his legend. This scam reminded the world. Sometimes a last name is the most expensive commodity you can sell, even if it's not yours. 1770. Vienna. Inventor Wolfgang von Kempelen introduces the world to the Mechanical Turk, a wooden figure in Turkish attire sitting at a large chest, playing chess. The machine defeats Europe's best players, including Napoleon and Benjamin Franklin. Before each game, Kempelen opens the chest doors, revealing a complex system of gears, levers, and springs. The world was convinced this was the first intelligent machine. However, behind the illusion of mechanical genius hid one of the most brilliant scams of all time. Inside the chest, between clever mirrors and false partitions, lay a real chess master. He moved the pieces using magnets, saw the moves through thin fabric, and breathed through hidden holes while the audience marveled at the, quote, technology of the future. The secret of the Turk was kept for 84 years. The machine changed several owners before the secret was revealed in a newspaper article. This scam became a symbol of how easily people believe in the magic of technology, forgetting that behind every miracle, there is often just an ordinary person who is very good at hiding. 1911. The Louvre. The world doesn't yet know what the Mona Lisa is, as it's just one of many paintings in the long corridors. But everything changes when Italian craftsman Vincenzo Peruggia simply takes it off the wall, hides it under his smock, and walks out of the museum. The next day, the empty spot on the wall becomes the world's top news. People come to the Louvre just to look at the nails where the painting once hung. While the police search for the thief, the true mastermind, Marquis de Valfierno, begins his game. He didn't want the original. With the help of a talented forger, he produced 6 perfect copies before the theft. Now, with the whole world screaming about the disappearance, he sells these copies to 6 American millionaires. Each believes they've bought the stolen masterpiece and is forced to remain silent to avoid jail for possessing stolen goods. The real painting was found only 2 years later, when Peruggia tried to sell it to a gallery in Italy. But by then, the Mona Lisa had transformed from a simple portrait into the most famous object in the world. Valfierno was never caught. He made millions on copies without ever holding the original. This scam proved the price of art isn't the paint, but the story the media tells about it. Early 20th century, Edward Solomon, a man of impeccable manners, appears in the major corporate offices of London. He claims to have gained exclusive rights to develop the natural resources of Palawan Island in the Philippines. In his suitcase are maps marked with gold, pearl, and rubber deposits. He offers investors a share in a new El Dorado, where land costs pennies and profits will be in the billions. Solomon had never been to Palawan. All his maps were drawn in a rented apartment, and the official permits from colonial authorities were masterful forgeries. He hosted lavish dinners where he served guests exotic fruits, claiming they were freshly delivered from his plantations. Desperate to own a tropical paradise, businessmen wrote checks exceeding £1 million. The scam was exposed when one of the companies sent its own expedition to check the plots. Instead of gold mines, they found only impenetrable mangrove forests that the locals hadn't even heard were for sale. Solomon managed to withdraw the cash and vanish. This story became a classic example of how easily a dream of a far-off paradise can be sold to those who have never left their office. Late 19th century. James Duke, known as the Sugar King, decides to completely seize the United States market. He creates an illusion of scarcity by secretly buying up small producers through shell companies. Simultaneously, he claims to have invented a new refining technology that makes his sugar the purest in the world. It wasn't just business, it was a war for every cube of sweetness on American tables. To push out competitors, Duke used fake patents. He claimed any other production violated his rights and flooded courts with lawsuits. Most small factories simply gave up, lacking money for lawyers. Bribed officials turned a blind eye to the monopoly, while Duke raised sugar prices 5-fold. He held an entire nation hostage, selling them a product that cost him almost nothing. The sugar empire only wavered after anti-monopoly investigations. It was revealed that the secret technology was stolen, and the patents were invalid. Although Duke kept part of his wealth, his methods became a symbol of dirty capitalism. This scam showed that fraud can be massive, legal on paper, and yield billions if you have enough power to change the very concept of truth. The 1850s. The United States is gripped by railway fever. At the center of events is a group of scammers calling themselves the Illinois Land Committee. They appear in Chicago with documents bearing state seals of incredible precision. Their claim is shocking. Vast tracts of state land where future tracks are to be laid allegedly belong to a private consortium due to a forgotten error in the state's initial acts. The scammers acted with sophistication. They didn't sell the land. They offered railway companies a settlement of claims in exchange for shares and millions in cash. Using bribed clerks, they planted their forged deeds into official archives just days before inspections. East Coast bankers, fearing a construction halt, wrote checks for amounts that today equal billions of dollars. The scam collapsed when a young lawyer noticed the ink on a century-old document hadn't fully absorbed into the paper. When the committee's founders were targeted for arrest, it turned out they had already left for Canada with the cash. This case forced the U.S. government to completely overhaul the land registration system, but hundreds of investors were left with stacks of paper worth less than a tavern lunch. The Victorian era. London newspapers are filled with advertisements for Greenose syrup, a universal remedy for insomnia, coughs, and crying infants. The manufacturer claims it's a gift of nature, created from rare exotic herbs. Mothers buy bottles by the thousands, as just one spoonful makes the crankiest child calm and sleepy for long hours. Behind the beautiful promises hid a deadly cocktail. The main ingredient of the wonder drug was liquid morphine mixed with sugar syrup and alcohol. The scammers knew the drug was highly addictive, guaranteeing them repeat customers. For 10 years they made millions, until hundreds of infants began dying from a mysterious exhaustion, which was actually severe drug overdose. When medicine finally began to be regulated, the Greenough laboratory was shut down, and the owners fled abroad under new names. This tragic scam became the impetus for the first drug control laws. It will forever remain in history as an example of how cynical fraud can be when greed is masked as healthcare. 1888. A mysterious Count Vorontsov appears in Parisian banks, claiming to be an unofficial representative of the Russian emperor. His task is to urgently and secretly purchase an entire squadron of warships from private shipyards for a, quote, special mission in the Pacific. He displays letters with imperial monograms and gold cords that seem flawless. The Count convinced bankers to grant him a massive advance credit, claiming funds from St. Petersburg were delayed due to diplomatic difficulties. To confirm his legitimacy, he hosted a lavish reception on a rented yacht, passing it off as the flagship of his future flotilla. French magnates, dreaming of lucrative contracts with the Russian Empire, gave him access to millions of francs. In reality, the Count was a former cashier from Marseille with a talent for calligraphy. No ships existed, and he wrote the letters himself in a cheap hotel room. By the time the actual Russian embassy stated they didn't know any Vorontsov, the adventurer was already on his way to South America. This scam so humiliated the French bankers that they tried to hush the case up for years to avoid admitting their gullibility. The 1880s. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the man who gave the world the Suez Canal, promises a new miracle, a path through the Isthmus of Panama. France is in ecstasy. Hundreds of thousands of small investors, from farmers to teachers, invest their last francs in company shares. Lesseps draws maps of a paradise where technology will easily conquer nature. But reality was hell. Workers died by the thousands from yellow fever and malaria, and machinery sank into swamps. To hide the catastrophic failure and attract new money, Lesseps began a massive bribery campaign. Over 150 French politicians and journalists received bribes for publishing fake reports of fantastic progress. It was the largest corruption scandal of the 19th century. When the company finally went bankrupt, it was revealed that 1 billion francs had simply evaporated. Hundreds committed suicide over lost fortunes, and the French government nearly collapsed. The word Panama became synonymous with dirty fraud for decades. This story proved even a national hero can become the architect of disaster if his ego grows larger than reality. The 1960s, provincial regions of Pakistan. A man appears in remote villages accompanied by, quote, armed guards. He introduces himself as a direct descendant of the nation's founders and a personal government emissary. With papers adorned with intricate seals, he announces an emergency patriotism tax for the modernization of the country. The scammer was so persuasive that entire communities gave him gold, livestock, and a share of their crops. He hosted state dinners where he read fictional messages from the president, and even conducted mobilizations of young men for non-existent battalions. For 3 years he ruled dozens of villages like a minor dictator, collecting millions of rupees while the actual police didn't even suspect his existence. He was caught by chance when one of the mobilized boys fled to a big city and tried to find his military unit. The scammer fled into the mountains, leaving behind thousands who believed they were helping their country, but in reality were only filling the pockets of one actor. It's a reminder that fear of power and faith in authority are the easiest tools for enslavement. 1920. Arthur Ferguson, a failed Scottish actor, stands near the British Museum in London. Noticing a wealthy American tourist admiring the statues, He approaches and introduces himself as the curator of the secret department. Arthur confidentially reveals that due to national debts, the government has decided to secretly lease the most valuable exhibits to private collectors. The tourist was thrilled. Ferguson leased him the Rosetta Stone for £5,000 a year. The scammer even gave him a fake receipt on official-looking stationery he'd printed himself. Sensing success, Arthur went to the US, where he tried to lease the White House and the Statue of Liberty. He convinced victims that the structures needed expensive restoration, so the government was looking for, quote, temporary sponsors. He was arrested when another victim tried to enter the White House with their key. At trial, Ferguson stated he was only, quote, giving people what they wanted, the feeling of ownership over the impossible. He became a legend among scammers, proving there is no object on the planet that cannot be sold if the buyer has enough money and zero common sense. 1785. France is on the brink of explosion. Jean de la Motte, an adventurer with empty pockets but royal ambitions, devises a plan to destroy Queen Marie Antoinette's reputation. She convinces the naive Cardinal de Rohan that the Queen passionately desires to buy an incredibly expensive diamond necklace of 644 stones but wants to do it secretly, through an intermediary. To prove the Queen's will, Jeanne organizes a midnight meeting in the Versailles Gardens, where a prostitute resembling Marie Antoinette hands the cardinal a rose. Blinded, Rohan buys the necklace on credit for 1,600,000 livres. Jeanne takes the jewelry, breaks it into individual diamonds, and begins selling them on the London black market. The Queen had no idea such deals were being made in her name. When the jewelers came to the palace for their money, a scandal erupted. Although the Queen was innocent, the people believed in her extravagance. This scam became the spark that ignited the French Revolution. The diamond necklace, which no one ever saw whole again, cost Marie Antoinette her head on the guillotine. History proves, sometimes a false rumor can be sharper than real iron. May 4, 2000. Millions of people worldwide open their email to find a message titled "I love you." Inside is a text file promising a love confession. Who could have thought these 3 words would crash the servers of the Pentagon, CIA, and the world's largest banks within hours? It wasn't a hack in the traditional sense. It was a scam built on the human need for affection. The virus was created by 2 Filipino students, Onel de Guzman and Rainel Ramones. The program didn't just delete files. It automatically resent itself to everyone in the victim's address book. In a few days, 45 million computers were infected. Total damage reached an incredible $10 billion. The world fell into digital chaos because everyone wanted to believe someone on the other end truly loved them. Most surprisingly, the students couldn't be punished. The Philippines simply had no cybercrime laws at the time. This scam forever changed our approach to digital security. It showed that the weakest link in any system isn't the software code but the human heart, ready to open the door to any enemy if they come wearing the mask of love. 1980. American Dennis Hope finds a loophole in international law. The Outer Space Treaty forbids nations from owning celestial bodies, but says nothing about private individuals. Hope sends a letter to the UN, declaring himself the owner of the Moon, Mars, and all other planets in the solar system. Receiving no reply, he decides, silence is a sign of consent. He founds the Lunar Embassy and begins selling plots on Earth's satellite for $20 an acre. Hope issues certificates, maps, and even a lunar constitution. To date, he has sold over 600 million acres. His clients include 3 former U.S. presidents, Hollywood stars, and millions of ordinary people. It is the longest and most successful scam in history, where the commodity is something untouchable. Legally, these papers have no power, but Hope has made millions without leaving his home. This final fact reminds us, the line between brilliant business and large-scale fraud often exists only in our heads. We aren't buying land in a crater, but the illusion of owning a piece of the universe. And as long as there are people willing to pay for a dream, there will always be someone to package and sell it. Do you believe your eyes? Do you think history is written by heroes and kings? You're wrong. History is written by those who manage to deceive millions. From fake countries to the sale of the Eiffel Tower, the world we know is built on a foundation of exquisite lies and audacity. Today we will peek into the dark offices of Wall Street, smell the rusty metal in Paris, and see how a single "I love you" letter can bring the entire internet to its knees. These are 33 moments when the truth proved too boring to be real. Each of us wants to believe in a miracle, in easy money, in a sudden inheritance. It's this feeling that those whose names we reveal today play upon. Are you sure you can't be fooled? Let's see if you'll want to buy a piece of the moon by the end of this video. We've gathered 33 of humanity's largest scams. But be careful. The last fact will make you question what actually belongs to you in this world. Are you ready to learn the price of gullibility? Welcome to a world where truth is just a commodity. Starting our countdown. Fact number 1. 33 stories. Billions of stolen dollars and broken dreams. But the main lesson isn't about money. The real scam is the illusion that we are in control. The world around us is still full of Victor Lustigs and Ruja Ignatovas, who have simply changed names and interfaces. Which of these stories struck you the most? Whose audacity made your heart beat faster? Write in the comments. Would you have been ready to buy the Brooklyn Bridge if it were offered to you? We've just revealed 33 secrets, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. Subscribe to not miss our next investigations that will change your perception of reality. We are here so you see what others try to hide. Next time, we will tell you about the secret societies that rule the world under the mask of charity. You won't believe who is actually behind the biggest events of today. See you in the shadows.